Welcome back to my channel, my friends. As some of you may know, I ran my first ever half marathon race last autumn after beginning my running journey at the beginning of last year. And what should I say? I'm hooked. And therefore I have signed up for my first ever marathon race, which is coming up. And right now I'm preparing for that. This is a very scary goal for me. And I know that if I want to reach the finish line of that marathon race, I need to be really structured with my training. Therefore, in this video, I want to talk about everything that goes in my marathon preparation, which is essentially combining the signs from this video that I did with my busy schedule. I will show you what I did before starting the training block, what my approach and volume looks like, how I'm structuring the sessions as a beginner runner while being busy with work and uni into my weekly schedule, and how the mindset changes the game. And the best thing about this is that all that I'm showing you here today is not connected or fixed to any paces or specifics to myself. It all has to do with your heart rate zones. So feel free to get some inspiration for maybe your own training. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, please hit the like and subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. As already mentioned in the video that I did about the signs of running, you can get a rough idea of your maximum heart rate without any lab testing. And since I'm a working student trying to make meets end, I cannot afford a lab test, especially being the casual beginner runner that I am. So instead, within the first 2 weeks of my marathon training, I went to the track and tried the maximum heart rate test that I have linked in the running signs video to be able to get a rough idea where my heart rate zones are probably at. So we are here at the place where we would like to do our heart rate max test, and I've looked the link up. So the plan is to do a warm-up, which I've already done because I have a 50-minute run today, which is in heart rate zone 2, and I've done half of that to get here. So I'm already warmed up. Therefore, I start directly into the 2 intervals of 4 minutes. During the intervals, you should go for a pace where it's hard for you to talk, so you should not be able to pass the talking test. And then after each of these 2 intervals, you have a 3-minute of active rest, so you don't pause completely, you go on with a very, very slow pace to recover a bit. And then for the 3rd and last interval, you go in exactly the same as for the other 2, but 2 minutes in, you increase the speed even further, and then you're running until you're too exhausted to continue. And then with the heart rate monitors, I will hopefully see the plateau, which is then my heart rate max. The setup for the heart rate monitors, I have an Apple Watch which I'm tracking with, which is just taking the pulse from my wrist, and then I have a heart rate monitor which is the chest belt or something, I don't know how you call this, and this is connected to my usual Apple Watch. I just want to see how accurate the Apple Watch is in comparison to like a pulse belt, and yeah, we'll see how this is going to work out. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm happy to do so let's go into it. So basically, this was back in January, and it was freezing cold out that day. The track was even a bit slippery because the water layer was slightly frozen that was on there. It did not really go to plan. So even though I felt like I gave it my absolute best, my cold joints and the weather conditions had other plans for me. The maximum heart rate that I recorded there on that day was lower than the maximum heart rate that I had tracked within the past year. So this is what rough testing is. It is just trying to get an idea and taking the values not too seriously that you collect there, because such a test means that with different daily form or different external factors such as the weather conditions, your maximum heart rate that you record in that session can look very differently. If I had done that on a hot summer day with the sun beaming down on me, it would probably have been a completely different story. But in January it was cold, and this is how I did it, and I knew that this was probably not my real maximum heart rate. So what I did instead was I took that value and just added some beats to it. Not too many, obviously, but just some, so that I got into an area where I think this is probably realistic. And calculated my heart rate zones from there and configured them in my watch so that I was good to go for my marathon training phase. Obviously, I don't take these values too seriously. It's just to get an idea for my easy runs if I need to slow down, or for my high intensity sessions such as sprints or intervals if I have to push even further because I'm not in the zones that I need to be in. So it's all just a rough estimate and it's taken with a grain of salt. As I have already talked about it in a few of my other videos, I like to continue my training and keep it as varied as possible. But I also knew that a marathon prep is something completely different to a half marathon prep, so I knew that probably I needed to adjust my workout schedule ever so slightly. To be able to prepare properly for the marathon distance, in a usual week, it was not fixed. I could deviate from it because it was not a fixed schedule that I put it on, but generally the type of sessions in a week were strength training to maintain muscle and also get stronger in my runs, reduce the risk of injuries, promote bone health, all the good stuff that you get from strength training. Then slow runs in your heart rate zone 2 to build your endurance base, intervals or sprints to have the high intensities, so anything between your heart rate zone 4 or your heart rate zone 5, and then progression runs, which range anywhere between zone 3 and zone 5, as well as stability, which includes core work, but also the running specific systems, so a lot of plyo, a lot of body weight, explosive work to help your joints and tendons with the running motion, and then also mobility, because believe me, if you run a lot and you don't stay on top of your mobility, you will get very stiff very quickly. And I wanted to include all these different styles of training or prehab work, if you wish, into my routine, not only to have a hopefully injury-free marathon experience, but also everyday life is diverse. And I train to be prepared for that essentially. So I wanted to keep my training routine as varied as possible while still having the main goal being the marathon race. Now that we know what the general sessions look like, we can talk about the volume. To give you an overall idea what the training plan looks like, I have visualized it here. And I will just briefly talk about some things that you can see in there. This is how my training looks ideally. Maybe I'm not able to hit all the sessions as they are planned, but this is how my training plan for the whole marathon prep would look if every week I hit all the sessions that I want to hit. As you can see in the beginning phase, the running volume is kind of high, but not overly so, with most of the time dedicated to low intensity runs and then some time for intervals or sprints, or even some progression runs. Also, you see that the strength training is okayish high. To translate this data into a kind of weekly split, for the first few weeks, I have 2 low intensity runs, either defined through minutes or distance, 1 running session that is higher in intensity, either intervals, sprints, or a progression run. And then I have 1 to 2 strength training sessions, either split in upper and lower body or full body. And all the stability, core work, or plyometric stuff, I called running specific exercises here. In the plot, I did not visualize the mobility work because I don't have fixed sessions for that. I either do it after training or on a rest day, and I also adapt to what feels extremely stiff or what I feel like needs a little bit more work than just a usual routine. For the second phase of my training, which is an 8-week build-up, more dedicated to specifically the marathon, because it's the 8 weeks before the race, the running volume goes up in total, because for this phase, the priority is shifted towards the running in order to prepare as best as possible for the race while preserving the muscle's capacity. So the runs go from 3 sessions to 4 sessions, and because I train 4 to 5 times a week, that means for me that I ideally do 1 full body session, hitting at least all muscle groups in there for a bit. Therefore, I end up with 2 low intensity runs, 1 high intensity session such as intervals or sprints, and 1 progression run a week for the running side of things, and then 1 full body strength session, and the running specific stuff as well as mobility stays the same throughout this period. And with that, I'm kind of all set to go. As I have already mentioned a few times now, nothing of that is fixed, and I don't plan out all the weeks and have the same layout each and every week, because I plan on a weekly basis, see what my schedule in that week looks like, what do I have to do for uni, what times I'm working, what times I'm spending time with friends and family and stuff like that. And then I put in the sessions as I go, because essentially no week for me looks the same. But there were a few things that I tried to look for in every week. So what I did is the longest run of the week, I always tried to space as far away as possible from the leg session that I do, so that my legs can recover and I'm not training fatigued or with DOMS in the running sessions. But then also, as for the dedicated marathon prep, a lot of the runs were 20 kilometers and plus, and some of them even around the 30 or 35 kilometer mark. So I wanted to put these very long runs on the weekends, ideally on the Saturday or maybe on the Sunday, because for me, with my job and uni, otherwise I would have needed to train super early in the morning or very late at night, and these runs with the paces that I do, which are quite slow, take a very, very long time. So I tried to put these on my weekends. But apart from that, all the trainings were flexible. I put them in as I went week by week to just make it as sustainable as possible with the training volume that I did. It's very important for me that I have at least 2 rest days a week, because I feel like that I really need that to properly recover, except for maybe mobility work, which is not really demanding but rather relaxing for me. But I really wanted to make sure that I'm recovering properly in this phase and not get any injuries. And if that sometimes meant in a week that I had to sacrifice some of the strength sessions or shorten the strength sessions a bit because it felt too overwhelming for me, then this is totally fine for me to do. And if I hit upper body that week, and I feel like at the end of the week it's all too overwhelming, but oh my god, I still have the lower body session open for this week, I then sometimes, if it was extremely stressful, shifted it then just to the next week and made sure that in the next week I really focused the legs or put in a little bit more time there. So it's not all that I manically follow all the sessions week by week, because otherwise I would get burned out in the process, and that's not what I want, because I want to have fun with my training. And in terms of stats, organization and structure, that's kind of it. But a thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit more here as well, because I found that very, very helpful for my training, is the mindset. If you are preparing for your first marathon, or you think about preparing for your first marathon, but you feel really overwhelmed, or you don't really know where to start, or you feel like this goal is very scary and you're not courageous enough to sign up for it or anything like that, then just do it in your own pace. No one is forcing you to follow a dedicated plan week by week, stay consistent with it all the time. That makes no sense at all if you don't have fun while doing it. Don't get me wrong, some sessions are hard, and on some days motivation is low, but overall you should enjoy your training and the journey that you are on, even though there are hard elements in there. You don't have to rush it. You can start really small, incorporate some training sessions that go a bit towards running, and see what you like and what feels good for you and what feels sustainable for you. And then when there comes a moment where you have built up a bit of confidence in your running ability and you think like, yes, I want to sign up for the next best thing, whether it's a 5K, 10K, half marathon, or even a marathon, or even an ultra, or whatever your goal is, then just take the leap of faith and sign up for that event so that you have something to work towards. Because now that you have tried it out, you know that you actually like the base layer of the training and you feel ready to have a dedicated preparation phase for that. For me personally, the idea of running a marathon sounded very unrealistic a year ago. Even running a half marathon sounded very unrealistic. Last year at that time, I was struggling to even be able to run a zone 2 run outside consistently, and I needed to walk quite a lot in between to stay low, or if I then was frustrated and didn't want to walk, I then was not staying in zone 2 anymore and stuff like that. So I was pretty much struggling to get the base training sessions done properly. And now 1 year later, I'm preparing for my first ever marathon. And in the past few weeks of the dedicated marathon prep, where the longer runs got longer and longer, up to 35 kilometers, each and every week, I had the moment where I thought, wow, this is the longest distance that I've ever run in one go. And I was surprising myself each and every week with a new achievement. But my mindset around being able maybe to complete this distance completely changed. After some weeks, some things click, or then you hit a very good hard session, or you hit a very low heart rate with a pace in a low intensity run. And these little moments really made me think that, yes, maybe it is kind of realistic to do that race for me. What I would like to say is that in the preparation phase, the most important thing, maybe beside having a sustainable training routine, is your mindset about it. Go in a curious manner and just get started and try it out and see whether you maybe surprise yourself when you like it. And by doing that, you maybe already gain some confidence and realize on the way that a marathon runner can be a completely different thing for different people. A marathon can mean crushing your times, but a marathon can also mean to have that as a life-changing or a mind-changing event to go into, to maybe for the first time ever start preparing for something and sticking to it and being really structured with your training and not disappointing yourself by quitting halfway through. The thing is, on the day, if you decide to go for a race, people will cheer for you, regardless whether you run a sub 3 hour marathon or you need to walk quite a lot of the distance on the course that day. And that is the beautiful thing about it, actually. So what I want to say is, with that very unstructured talk now, after being quite structured in the beginning, is that don't let your own expectations of what you think you are capable of limit you in any way. Just try it out, be curious, and take the leap of faith, and then see what happens. And maybe you will surprise yourself with the fact that after thinking that you can't run, some months or years later, you are saying, sign up for my first ever marathon. And change your mindset about what you think in your life in general, with other areas of your life you are capable of doing, and maybe exceeding these then as well, because you saw, in that area I could do it, maybe in others I can too. I think this is one of the most powerful things that we can do with selecting these kind of challenges for ourselves, to then transfer that to other areas of our life. And with that being said, I hope this video helped you in any way, whether it was the kind of structured stuff, the preparation before you train, or maybe the mindset stuff that I talked about, or maybe just being inspired in general. I would be very interested whether you are on a running journey right now, or whether you plan to be on a running journey, on what your thoughts and feelings are. You can drop that down in the comments below. And with that being said, I'd say stay curious, look after yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.